Hi, so this is the 8th in a series of simple explainer videos that relate to the Curious Cloud methodology. My name is David Foster, and in these videos I'll be bringing Curious Cloud to life, both to help you notice and solve complex problems, but also as a way to help you become more generally engaged and productive in the work that you do. We're currently looking at the creative problem solving part of the Curious Cloud process. In the Curious Cloud article, I write about the difference between mysteries and puzzles, with the latter tending to be more straightforward to solve. Within the process, we've essentially used the Think3 divergent stage to turn our initial complex problem, which may be consistent with the idea of a mystery, into a puzzle that is easier to process in a more focused way using the Think4 convergent stage. If we had created just one solution, then it would look pretty good to us at the moment, irrespective of its actual efficacy. Instead, we've leveraged a characteristic of decision science, which shows that comparing 2 or 3 viable potential solutions substantially improves the odds of a positive outcome. I mentioned in the last video about the value of considering a status quo option when thinking about challenges like strategy creation. The reason for doing this is that decision makers, having weighed the options, can sometimes decide to simply carry on what they were doing before, given that this may seem to involve no risk. By including an analysis of the status quo in the comparison, the team will be comparing all the options on the table, given that this status quo option may actually carry a prohibitively high cost. The underlying method that I'm going to describe may initially seem pretty unwieldy, but is actually quite straightforward when you work with a live example. We're first going to create a simple table to capture the attributes of the different options. And for each option, there are 4 measures, probably, that are particularly relevant. The likely payoff, if the solution works to plan, any upfront or ongoing investment that will be required in time as well as money, the realistic overall likelihood of success as a percentage, and any downside risk. For example, if the solution doesn't work or the implementation goes wrong. We've tried to maximize stakeholder involvement and minimize unconscious bias throughout the Curious Cloud process. So in completing this table with a mix of numbers and narrative, you should consider the perspectives of all the stakeholders who will be affected. We are then performing what is essentially a risk-adjusted payoff calculation. We're looking at the notional payoff and deducting any investment, remembering that upfront expenditure in terms of time and money has a higher notional value to us than time or money recouped later on. We're then applying the success percentage and looking at the results in light of any potential downside risks. You've almost certainly spotted that the calculation is unlikely to result in a set of neatly numerical answers to compare. I think of these calculations as voodoo economics. They may not be numerically robust, but they should still give you a sufficiently clear indication regarding which alternative to choose. The option with the best payoff for the least upfront investment and with the best chance of success should win the day. But it's critical to factor in any downside risk. For example, a downside reputational risk carries a much higher potential cost to the organisation, and this cannot be ignored when deciding between options. In our cooking analogy, you might initially choose the option that you think is delicious and has had previous good feedback, especially if the ingredients for this option are all in the kitchen. Now, this is sunk cost, so no further money is required, and where the cooking input is roughly equitable to the other alternatives, and especially if the chances of you producing a successful meal are high. However, if there's even a remote chance that one of the guests has an allergy to an ingredient in this recipe, which carries a high downside risk if they're affected, then your decision-making process would change appropriately. That's it until the next video. In the meantime, when solving even relatively straightforward challenges, get into the habit of creating at least 2 or 3 alternative solutions and then evaluating them based on a risk-adjusted payoff calculation. Even if your view is unchanged by the process, then you'll be able to provide a stronger rationale for your decision, which will enhance your reputation for critical thinking. There are deeper explanations in my Curious Cloud article, freely available from the Rally Strategic website. But if you find that this video is useful or that it's piqued your curiosity in some way, then please click like and share it with others.